So hopefully you're here to listen a little bit about recommendation systems and how they blend into personalization and marketing applications. And let's dive into it. I know all of you come in with a different type of profile, and those of you watching online. You might be a very technical analyst. You might lead analyst. You might be a very senior leader in your organization that's quite data-driven. So I'll speak at altitude that I will attempt to be beneficial to all those different type of personalities. For those of you that just have a very technical appetite for the details, my approach to this presentation is to complement a very technical white paper, which you can find in the mobile app to download to support what we discussed today. Now, all of you work for different companies, different brands, different industries. But at the end of the day, nonprofit, for-profit, you're effectively trying to sell people something, a product, a service, consulting. And when we think about this concept of digital, we see it in the media, we see it in the press, we see it at MarTech conferences. We need to radically transform, become more digitally centric. There's a lot of jargon, a lot of hype. And when I interpret these type of statements, I try to bring it down to a very simple concept that we can all wrap our head around. And so when I think about becoming digital and what we do across virtually any industry to resonate with our target audiences, we just effectively measure ourselves. Are we selling more stuff? Are we converting better? Are we delighting and making our customers happy? That's all we're trying to do. How many of you love advertising? How many of you love it passionately? Exactly. Whether you're in your email account, you're on your mobile phone, you're on social media, you're on a search engine, it's literally everywhere. And for some of us, it's disruptive. You could be at a very beautiful resort in an exotic place. You could be walking down a city street. You could be at a restaurant, coffee shop, whatever. What are people doing? You can have a beautiful mountainscape in the background, glued in. It's crazy if you actually watch how society has evolved with these devices. And within it are a tremendous number of organizations trying to attract your attention. There's a piece of jargon that I hear a lot in the marketing space referred to as content shock. Consumers cognitively can only process so much. So what do? We mentally shut down, right? We're getting sprayed with these different advertisements, these things that are trying to engage and capture our attention. We just ignore it. So, in reality, what can a data-driven marketer do? An analyst who supports that type of team. We need to break through the noise. And because of how people have evolved to just stare at these screens all the time, marketers and brands want to resonate with you there. So the question is, does your organization need to adapt? Now, there's a term that was coined actually by thought leadership at Google, but it has relevance here in the context of recommendation systems. And it's called the micro moment of truth, or micro moment marketing. And what this means is, with all that noise that's trying to capture your attention when you're having your different digital experiences, there will come moments in time, and it's just moments, and I'm talking a few seconds, where you actually are paying attention to a specific brand or organization, that something they have communicated to you has resonated. But it's a few seconds. And so when we think of ourselves as analysts, and we're training models, I want you to start thinking about, how do we make it actionable in a few seconds? How do we embed, in this case we'll talk about an algorithm specific to recommendation systems, an algorithmic model into an opportunity that a batch process cannot support. It's got to be real time. You might have heard of some of these companies. As we start talking more specifically about recommendation systems and what SAS does in that space, How many of you do business with Amazon? It'd be crazy if you didn't at this point. Most of us do. How many of you have a subscribership to Netflix? Many of you probably do. What's happening in those experiences? You purchase something, you view something. You might also like this, you might also like that. This has legitimized the usage of recommendation systems for analytical marketing. These brands are great examples of that. Let me show you an example of what SAS does with respect to our user community. Many of our users love to interact with this website. It's a community board of SAS users all over the world, exchanging views, exchanging frustrations, exchanging opportunities, things they've learned, tricks of the trade. It's our family, right? And we can come here and communicate with one another. But it's a message board. Message boards have been around pretty much since we started using the internet. It's an old school method of socializing before we had social media platforms. But within a message board, what do you have? You have thousands of users who are posting literally every minute of the day. It's a tremendous ocean of content, and we all go there for a personal, unique reason. So with all that content, how do I increase your level of interest, the level of relevance of this experience with you as an individual? So I may come across a recent topic about a very specific thing. I click on it. This was posted 54 minutes ago. And we're not going to read about the topic, but what I want to show you is what's happening over here on the right side. So within the community experience, we are actually triggering recommendations based on signals that you're providing very early on in the interactions with the community board, trying to highlight and raise awareness to unique pieces of content in a pool of content or an ocean of content that the algorithm believes is more relevant to you. That's the intent. How do we make this experience a bit more relevant? A few more slides and then we'll get into demonstrations. Now, in the context of analytical marketing, there's a lot of tried and true methods. So when I consult across different industries and meet different marketing teams, trying to assist them to get a bit more data-driven or analytically driven, use cases that are very common are things like A/B testing on a website experience, a mobile app experience, an email experience, a direct mail experience. We're trying out 2 different calls of action, 2 different creatives, whatever the factor they are testing, and they want to know which one is more effective in driving conversions or purchases or engagement, whatever it is they're measuring it against. A/B testing, multi-arm bandit testing, multivariate testing, they all fall under design of experiments for my more statistician type personalities. But the point is, you don't need much data to use those techniques. You really just need to sample a population and then expose them to different flavors of a campaign and then get a read. So this technique requires virtually almost no data. And as analysts, we're not building models. Now, let's go to the other end of the spectrum. Propensity-based modeling, which could be classical predictive modeling algorithms like regressions and tree-based methods, or machine learning algorithms, gradient boosting, neural nets, support vector machines. They all produce what? They can produce a propensity in a classification modeling context. So in those situations, as analysts, we love data, right? I don't want to go to a restaurant where the kitchen has no food. It's not going to be a very good dining experience. And so when I'm building models, I love to have lots of data, not just a little bit, because the more information I have, the more data sources I have before I model, I'm more optimistic the algorithm is going to learn more. Predictive accuracy goes up, misclassification rates go down, that sort of thing. Recommendation systems fall in the middle. You actually don't need that much data. So it's quite useful when maybe I haven't converted you into a first-time customer yet, and I want to start doing things with just a few signals that an anonymous visitor with my website or my app is producing. So you'll see in the demonstration that with just a little bit of data, or just a few columns or attributes, I can produce an algorithmic model that produces highly accurate predictions on what to recommend to an individual. Not a segment, an individual. I know as analysts, we love to think about the artisanal curation of how we optimize that model. And we can get that accuracy to improve 1%, 2%, we get energized. However, there's much more to think about in making it actionable. First, we need to be able to capture the relevant data inputs to feed into the algorithm that we're going to use in the recommendation system design. So where is that data going to come from? As an example, if we talk about websites, there needs to be a mechanism of capturing user interactions with that website, and that data is exposed to you so that you can prepare and aggregate it specifically for an algorithmic modeling application, not for just running a web analytic report. Assuming this data is available and you model it, we then need to think about how is it going to scale for the type of use case that you want to productionalize it for. Part of that is how am I going to deploy the recommendations? Because the output of a model, instead of a propensity score for a customer, will be a recommended product or recommended service or recommended piece of content. What are you going to use to deploy it? I want the analysts to have their moment in the sun. I want you to make a difference in the world. So thinking about how you will deploy on the output of the model is critical. So talk a little bit about the type of data that feeds into a recommendation system or the algorithms that support recommendation system designs. There are two types, explicit and implicit types of data signals that we can capture from prospects, consumers, customers, etc. So let's talk a little bit about explicit types of data capture. As an example, you've been on a website where you're asked to rate something. It could be a scale, 1 through 5, 1 through 7, 1 through 10. But you physically have to rate and give it a score. It could be a ranking from highest preference to lowest preference that you provide to that particular digital property or digital experience. Add to cart, add to wish list. You know those thumbs up like buttons that you see everywhere? Every time you click it, you're providing a signal most likely for a recommendation system. Your news feed is highly curated on Facebook based on a recommendation system based on what you're interacting with and liking and what you're not, as an example. Now, implicit data collection. This could be simply viewing a specific web page about a product, or a page view, if you will. You use the internal search functionality on a website to search out something. This could be another implicit data signal. How long you actually spend at a website, either in a given visit or visits in aggregate. So as an organization, a decision needs to be made about which types of data are more or less attainable and which types of data will help the recommendation system be more accurate in its predictions or recommendations. So with that said, some words of caution. If you are already doing this or you were going to start experimenting with the concept of an algorithm in a recommendation system design, there are 3 things to watch out for. Scalability. So tomorrow, I want to start capturing the relevant data about all the product offerings by my company. And I want to start feeding the algorithm with these signals. Now, you don't have much data yet, but you will. Every day, you'll be capturing more and more information from all the interactions from visitors and customers to your website or your app or whatever. And just like with all things in analytics, the data volume grows. Can you, based on the analytic technology you have within your own organization that you work with or your team works with, can you scale as the data volume increases? Can you meet the latency requirements of your use cases? Can you execute the algorithm to make sure that it's still actionable? Do you have to make a trade-off between which algorithm you use and accuracy of the model to just meet your production use case requirements? Now do note, as an example, the transition of SAS from 9.4 to Viya, we're increasing our capabilities of how we process large volumes of data, how we scale. So within the analytics space, there's a lot of innovation going on to combat this type of issue. Factorization machines as an algorithm I'll describe momentarily, how it processes to deal with scalability obstacles. The second problem, the cold start problem. If I only have a little bit of data in the initial release of my recommendation system or my targeting, well, then the predictions are going to be quite poor in the beginning. Every algorithm needs meaningful signals. And so it's going to take time for visitors or customers to provide you the signals and for that to mature to a certain point where the algorithm can actually start producing a higher level of predictive accuracy. It's just like training a model and reiterating and iterating. So in the early phase, you should expect that the predictive accuracy won't be very high. Sparsity. If you went to SAS.com, it's possible you could see approximately 250 different technologies that we develop and try to raise your awareness towards. Are you going to look at all 250 product pages? Highly unlikely. That goes for every visitor to any website. Whether your company offers just a few things of the world or you offer hundreds or thousands of things of the world. As an example, I only look at a small fraction of what it is your company offers. So everything else, with respect to the data set that's being created for the analysis, there's going to be a lot of missing values with my profile. There's going to be a lot of missing values for your profile and your profile. There will only be a few actual products or services that you've actually shown an interest in. So certain types of algorithms don't do very good with sparsity or a sparse matrix that have a high degree of missingness across the majority of the grid. But there are unique algorithms that support recommendation system designs that do quite well with this type of situation. The idea is that we need to use an algorithm that can reduce the dimensionality of the data across the users and the items. And with that said, we can become more accurate in our predictions when we reduce that dimensional space. Within SAS Viya, we have an algorithm entitled Factorization machines that is a fantastic fit for recommendation system design. What is it? Call it a predictive model, call it a machine learning model, call it an AI model, I don't care, that's jargon to me. It is just an algorithmic model. And it combines the benefits of a support vector machine, if you're familiar with that type of machine learning algorithm, and matrix factorization to deal with that sparsity issue that I was describing before. It also can scale across high parallelized performing environments. So the scalability issue is another thing we can tackle with this type of algorithm. At the end of the day, if you have a thirst for the technical details of the math, check out the white paper, right? My approach in this presentation is the business problem. And this algorithm is fantastic for marketers who want to embark on testing out a recommendation system approach. Within the world of SAS, how would we do it? Some of you are familiar with our Customer Intelligence 360 offerings. For those of you that know this already, apologize for the repeat. For those who don't know, SAS has a way of actually capturing website visitor data, mobile app user data, as two examples. There's other touch points with consumers where you can capture data as well. But in this example, I could add a JavaScript tag to your website to capture the relevant implicit or explicit signals that are needed to do a factorization machine analysis. So this is unique in the world of SAS. Typically, when you look at our analytical technologies, we say we can connect wherever your data is. With Customer Intelligence 360, we are creating the data source for you. We are also preparing that data in a very different way from, say, traditional web analytics solutions. Everyone can do digital reporting in BI. That's not exciting. We can do that too. What's exciting is we prepare this semi-structured clickstream data in the website example, and we aggregate it for the purposes of algorithmic modeling as well, reducing the amount of time you would spend on data prep, accelerating you to actually doing analysis. Then, as you know, within SAS Viya, we have a library of algorithms. So if you actually read a little bit more about recommendation systems today because you thought this talk was just a little interesting and you wanted to learn more, you see there's a lot of research out there across a variety of different algorithms. You could use association rules, market basket analysis, link analysis. There's other algorithms out there that could fit into a recommendation system design. But we're quite excited about the release of factorization machines with modern-day marketing challenges. Now, at the end of that comes what? It's very straightforward. It's going to be a recommendation for every customer, every visitor, every user. Could be a list of recommendations. But whatever it is, it needs to be actionable. So here we come back to Customer Intelligence 360, which can actually inject content into a digital experience. Website, app, or outbound marketing tactics. Email, direct marketing, where you could leverage this recommendation scoring. One more slide before I get into the demo. We have a viewpoint in how we design our software. An analyst or a manager or director who just works with data, say 20, 30, 40% of the time, to a data scientist or a very technical analyst who works with data 80, 90, 100% of the time. We're all on a common mission. We need to solve a problem, and in this case, it's a marketer's problem. Whether you code, whether you like to use model pipelines, or you like to do visual drag and drop, we're designing technology to enable all these profiles to work together as a team. In my opinion, I don't think a data scientist is a magical unicorn trapped in one human body. I think it's a team. So let's show you some examples of this. For some crazy reason you like the demo, I'm going to show you an accelerated version of it because we only have so much time together. But the link at the bottom of this slide, which you have access to the slides through the app or on the conference website, do the proceedings and the sessions. There's a link here that gives you a 40-minute more detailed version of what I'm about to show you. Let's jump into it. So we're going to start with an experience of a consumer interacting with a particular organization or brand. There we go. Let me just resize this, and then we'll get going. Okay, beautiful. I'm going to go ahead and clear out my browser cookies and assume this customer experience or prospective customer experience is beginning with a website as the first touch point with the organization. And as soon as I refresh my screen, data starts to come through. The website on the right, relax, SAS.com is not displaying coffee beans on the home page, although some of us might need some espresso or coffee right now, given the 3 days we've been here together. This is just a copy or a clone of the SAS.com website that I can use for demonstrations and maintain some creative control over it. On the left has nothing to do with any software that we develop. It is simply a guy that does technology demos and wants to transparently tell you a story about what the technology is doing. That's it. So what I did was I cleared my browser cookies, refreshed, and I'm trying to exemplify a first-time anonymous visitor interacting with this organization on their first visit. Right away, there's some things that point out in the upper left of the screen where it says unknown visitor profile. There are 3 very long strings of numbers and values. Those are IDs that SAS is immediately dropping on this visitor to identify the visit. Should this visitor come back a second, third, or 28th time across the time series, we can associate every visit with one anonymous visitor ID and allow you to not just look at visit activity, but their entire visitor journey in one record of truth. And then, of course, you see an identity above that, which is a third ID. Should I actually share my personal identifiable information across any visit in this journey? SAS has the capability to refer to other sources of data that you might have about your customers, typical customer relationship management or transactional data, where you might have identities of your customers, to find out, is that customer now interacting with us in this digital touch point? If they are, rewrite that master identity and now associate all of this information at a customer level aggregation about their digital behavior. If they're not a customer, this could become now your customer key ID that we're mapping to their digital behavior. Enough about identity management. Assume when our technology is firing on a website or any other digital property for that matter, We want to capture everything, every interaction across every single page of a domain or domains, again, in the context of web. So I'm going to start clicking around. Like most of us do when we interact with an organization, I want to see what you got. Just like many of your organizations, there's a lot of stuff that you could potentially offer. Now, I want you to take note of two things. Where it says mid-sized business and where it says SAS Visual Investigator, these are two areas of this page that I've set up for personalization. So you'll see those areas change as we continue with the demonstration. Now, of all the things I could click on, I decide to click on, say, Advanced Analytics. So what have I done? This is an example of an implicit data signal. I'm now viewing a page about something specific that this organization offers. I'm going to do one of two things. I'm either going to meet the conversion goal, purchase could be the definition of this conversion goal, or not purchase and move somewhere else on the website and not meet that conversion goal. So let's say I do just that. I move away. I decide to migrate back to the Products and Solutions menu, and look what happened in the lower right of the screen, where it said mid-sized business before has changed. So this is an example of a recommendation system surfacing. Within Customer Intelligence 360, we have an automated model built into the software. An analyst doesn't need to develop this. So this is an example of an automated model fueling the use case of a recommendation system design. It's assessing not just what I did, but also every parallel journey of every other visitor or user to this website. How did their journeys begin at the very early state of their journeys? If they started looking and showing an interest in the same exact product that I started with, what happened next when they didn't convert? What's the next most likely product that they have a higher conversion rate on? That's a simple way of explaining what's happening here. Let's say I don't fall for the analytic modeling allure, right? And I go somewhere else. Many times when I speak with a marketing team, they're a big fan of rule-driven targeting. You did X, now do Y. We start talking about analytical modeling and their workflows. Some of them are quite attracted to those concepts. Others resist. Just that's what I see in my consulting role. And so they talk to me about the success they have with rule-driven targeting. So I'm looking at this very specific product right now, and then when I go back to the home page changed, and it's like now the organization's chasing me. Hey, look at it again, look at it again, look at it again. So it's retargeting or remarketing. I want to one-up this, right? Let's do something better. So I'm going to go ahead and share my identity. Now, this could happen in the first visit. This could happen 15 visits later. I log in. An identity event fires in Customer Intelligence 360. You now see another version of me show up. What happened? In real time, SAS can refer to other sources of data that you have about customers, look for an identifier, compare it with information I just shared. If we see a linkage, we can overwrite everything we've been using from an identity management perspective and map it to your customer information. So now other sources of information you already have, say in offline databases or data warehouses, can be made available for targeting and personalization through Customer Intelligence 360. As an example, if you look below my picture, you'll see my age, you'll see my gender. Any demographic attribute could be available here. First, second, third-party data, doesn't matter. Right below it, you will see 2 recommendations associated with my profile. So this is scoring output from a custom-designed model that an analyst used a factorization machine algorithm to produce. So instead of a propensity score, we were just getting product recommendations in this demo example. So for Sunil, the first one is supply chain management, or supply chain intelligence, and the second one is data management. Now be open-minded. Think about all the products your organizations offer, services, and just replace with what I'm showing. So then the question is, where do we surface the primary recommendation? If I go back to my product and solutions menu, where it once said visual investigator, it's now changed. So the digital marketer decided this is where I want to surface the analytical recommendation from the factorization machine. It could have been surfaced anywhere, though. Could have been an email, could have been any type of outbound marketing tactic, or in this case, in real time on the web. Now let's say my lovely 4-year-old daughter, who runs the world in her mind, decides to require my attention. Say half an hour passes by. Maybe it's a day before I decide to think about the organization I was just doing some research with. And just like all of you have a SAS app on your phone, I have a SAS app on my phone. And I open that app. Now, I'm going to do this for the sake of credibility to the demo. When you download a mobile app for an organization that you like or trust, you typically share, if they ask for it, you typically share your personal information from the moment you download it. So they have that from that point going forward. I'm going to go ahead and log in. Oops. Almost there. And I'm now being exposed to a very specific offering. I will go back to the website or my desktop computer or laptop computer in a moment, but you'll see that I am now not being targeted by the supply chain offering. I'm being targeted with the second highest recommendation associated with my profile. So either scenario could have played out. We could have shown a second impression of the supply chain offering because I didn't meet the conversion goal on the website through my touch point with the mobile app. Or in this case, we're arbitrating. I didn't meet the conversion goal for the primary recommendation before. And now I migrated to a different touch point, the mobile app, associated with your organization, and it was smart enough to know that, oh, I didn't seem to like what was offered on the web, show something that still is an analytical recommendation, but is the second highest in this micro moment or micro opportunity with this consumer. I'll go back to my laptop. And just so you know, I'm not messing with you, there it is right there in the second recommendation. Okay, so let's actually migrate now to show you how I did this. Right? So I'll start with how I design the model. I'll then show you how we can make it actionable not just for batch use cases, but also real-time use cases. And then I'll close out with showing you how customer intelligence delivers all of this in the consumer experience. Logged me out the moment I came over. Okay, so everything I show you in this presentation will be using a visual drag and drop interface within SAS Visual Data Mining and Machine Learning, which is one of our modules on SAS Viya. Of course, if you wanted to do this through our coding window, you could as well. Just go into SAS Studio, and assuming you have the appropriate license, you would have factorization machines available to you as an analysis object or action. Okay, so let me show you real quick on a blank workspace how I built a prototype of this model. Right? So if you've not seen visual data mining and machine learning, your data is available to you here on the left. And when I said it was a very straightforward data set, we just have a few attributes. A product ID, a user ID, how many times they actually are looking at different product pages, a timestamp. Now, I'm going to scroll down to the factorization machine analysis object. Drop it into the workspace. And that calls the underlying action or procedure within SAS Viya. Now it says feed me data. Let's come over here to my different roles where I can assign to my attributes. I choose a response or target variable. I choose my predictors. The analysis runs. If you've built classification models before, there are some similarities and then some unique differences in interpreting the output of a factorization machine model. As an example, if we look at the iteration plot here in the upper left, and there's a loss function that's being visualized, there are a number of iterations that the algorithm goes through before it converges on a final set of results. So it's attempting, or not attempting, it's iterating until it can no longer reduce the root mean square error, which is the metric that it's using to optimize this particular model or this particular piece of math. Somewhat similar to a misclassification chart, I can look at this assessment plot in the lower right and see how my predicted recommendations are comparing with observed data. For those of you that like to tinker with models, even in the drag and drop interface, we have a variety of different model properties that you can start iterating through and trying to further optimize or improve the accuracy of the factorization machine. One unique value prop to highlight with our transition from SAS 9.4 or 9.x to Viya is hyperparameterization or auto-tuning. So for those of you that lead analysts who say, I'm still trying to optimize the model, we actually now have an optimization tuner within building this model where I can just click auto-tune. And for all the different properties that I could be iterating and adjusting manually to try to optimize this model, that optimization solver will run and identify the recipe that provides me the best model diagnostic metric that my input data will allow. There are different types of auto-tuning algorithms within SAS Viya. Welcome you to try it if you have access to the software. Okay, how will we actually take action on this? I can export the model, so the score code, if you will. In the Viya world, we call it an A-store file. This is where I can publish it and say my model governance software. Some of you have been exposed to SAS Model Manager. That's what I'll show you in this demo. You also can derive predicted. So I can score my input data. I can score it with my predicted recommendations. And those of you familiar with the term residuals, I can also score out my residual and my errors. So I'll move over to a different panel here in the software where I actually already did that scoring. And when I do, I want to maximize this lower window. And just as an example, just look at a very simplistic set of scoring output. I have my first column is my visitor identifier from the website. It could be any type of an identifier, user, customer, whatever. Then a specific product ID that maps to a product that my company can offer the world. And I've sorted this table based on the highest product recommendation score associated with each visitor or customer. So now I have my top ranking product recommendation tagged for every ID. This is just meant to visualize what the scoring looks like. Now, I told you that I could publish the model to SAS Model Manager. So let's go there. The value or the use case here is eventually you start as an organization or as a team producing many models. And those models start going into production. And then you need technology to augment your team to monitor when models might decay, as an example. You don't want a model that's not producing highly predictive and accurate recommendations affecting interactions with your target audiences. So this is where the value of model management technology starts to become more applicable. Within this, I have my factorization machine model that we can dig into. I can see a view into what input variables are going into training the model. I can also see what output variables are coming out, which are the predicted recommended products. I can reinterpret the scoring code into a variety of different languages, SAS languages, PMML, Python, R, Luau. Just a very quick appetizer about what we can do in the model management aspect of SAS Viya. What I'm going to do is highlight a use case around, some of you might have been exposed to SAS intelligent decisioning. I want to cater to a real-time use case, but I want to use more than just the factorization machine scoring to personalize the consumer's experience. So let me go there. So, with that said, let me explain what this little process workflow is doing. So both SAS Viya and SAS Customer Intelligence 360 are built on API frameworks. SAS Customer Intelligence 360 is monitoring what's happening in the web for my demo. I did something specific on the web, and that meets an event definition. And that event definition, when that criteria is met, Customer Intelligence 360 calls SAS Intelligent Decisioning and says, kick off this process for this unique visitor or customer. And so what does it do? The first thing it does is it actually runs the factorization machine model. And so for my visitor or customer ID, I will now have a list of product recommended scores from highest to lowest associated with my profile as the output. So that's what gets populated in the next step. It's basically a table of my ID with every product ranking score. Next, this is where I don't want to just look at a model score. So for those of you that are thirsty to see a little code, here's a little code. What I'm doing here is, if the highest ranking recommended product with my profile, if I've actually viewed that product or that page in the last week or in a recent time period, it would be silly to show it to me again. Show me the second highest and filter that highest ranking product away because I just looked at it in the last few days. Now, be creative here. You could use any business rule to complement the factorization machine scoring to make a bit more of an intelligent decision. And it doesn't have to be just website visitor, interaction data. It could also be other types of rules coming from other data sources. Ultimately, you want to produce either the highest ranking product recommendation after applying these filters, or it could be 2 or 3 or 4 recommendations based on your use case. But then when this is done, it communicates back the recipe for Customer Intelligence 360 to take the action on. Remember the micro moment or opportunity I was discussing earlier? A few seconds. That's all you have. We still want algorithmic modeling to play an influence in those low latency opportunities. So in the SAS Viya world, we have an environment for training models that we're quite familiar with that concept. We also have a complementary environment for hyper-transactional scoring, or what we call MAS, or microanalytic services, to accommodate these millisecond situations. The last thing I want to show you is now going back into Customer Intelligence 360, putting on my digital marketer hat. How did I actually complete this process? The first thing I want to show you is, what is SAS Intelligent Decisioning on Viya communicating back to Customer Intelligence 360? And so what I have here is just a custom application to show you how, hopefully in a straightforward way, how APIs communicate. It can be a bit of a technical topic. So I'm going to set up a connection. This is going to trigger the microanalytic service and that workflow I just explained to all of you. And so let's say user ID or customer ID or visitor ID 5 met that event on the website, what is going to happen when SAS Viya completes running that workflow? What is it going to return back? Oh, for user ID 5, target product ID 1. For user ID 8, target product ID 22. These now can map to creative assets that represent different products that we offer consumers for SAS Customer Intelligence to inject into a website experience, into an email, into a mobile app experience, etc. So now that you've seen that, let's jump into Customer Intelligence 360. I don't have time to walk you through the whole software and do a tour. I'll just get straight to the point. So within the software, SAS Customer Intelligence 360 can support these owned media channels and actually deliver campaigns or content or personalized or curated experiences. Direct marketing, email, mobile, web. And when there are third-party technologies that are doing this delivery of your campaigns and it's not SAS, we can still call SAS Viya to send a certain set of parameters or results to that third-party technology to make a better decision at the consumer touchpoint level. In my demo, I was doing something on the web. So this is where I started. I chose my web task. Now let me show you the completion of that. So you saw one of these creative assets in my website demo. And here, I have all the different creatives representing every single product that I could surface in that experience. So within Customer Intelligence 360, we have asset management. All your digital creative assets can be stored and can be attained so that SAS can deliver based on what the model is telling us to do or what intelligent decisioning is telling us to do. You can see here, for every product, there's an ID associated with it. Remember when I showed you what happened as the output when the API got called and Viya sent back the parameters? It was sending back a particular product ID for every user or visitor ID. That's where we connect the mappings here. You can layer on additional targeting if you like. I only want to expose people to my recommendation system who come through Google Chrome or Safari for some reason, or people who haven't been to the website in the last month, or people who are at least age 18 or older. Could be any online or offline data attribute that could be layered into additional filtering if you like. You can set a schedule, you can set prioritization, typical marketer type stuff that they think about when they're releasing a campaign of any sort. So all of those type of considerations can be accommodated. The last thing I'll show you is everything I'm talking about is in the context of a singular interaction. How do we now start to think about this across an entire customer or visitor journey? So we have this concept of activities. And here you can see an example where when somebody meets a very specific event criteria, they now get included into a journey of possible targeting opportunities or things that we can do to personalize their experience. So what you're seeing here is that journey builder. And the different colored nodes represent different touch points, things we would do on the web, things we would do in mobile, things we would do in email, et cetera, et cetera. Different tests we might run, different wait periods we might employ. Your recommendation system through factorization machines can play a role in this journey. Where do you want to exploit it? That's where you guys get to be creative. Thank you.
For questions or a reminder, please use the microphones as we are live streaming.
Okay, so thank you everyone. Safe journeys home. Hope you had a pleasant SAS Global Forum experience.